The challenge in OT cyber is actually very simple. OT environments were never built to be secure, as they are tended to be there for a long time, 20, 30 years. Today everyone is talking about IT-OT convergence, and it's happening today, which in essence is a load of nonsense. It has been connected since the 1990s. I made my first connections late 80s, beginning of the 90s. And at that point in time, cybersecurity was not an issue. The word doesn't even exist at that point in time. And the main challenge with cyber in factories is that cyber does not make your products cheaper, better, or you produce them faster. So the business case for introducing cybersecurity, when you're in a cookie factory, I introduce cyber, the neighbor does not, so the products from the neighbor do not bear the cost of the cyber part. And this is really the challenge. The challenge is in the business case, why would you introduce cyber? As history has shown that the true OT problems are little compared to IT. IT is a way bigger problem. Still, you got directives coming up, the NIS2, the Cyber Resilience Act, the Radio Equipment Directive, and then the challenge will be, are you going to be compliant or are you going to be cyber secure? And as a professional, I would say, compliancy is a result of your cyber program and not the other way around. Still, the challenge is the cost of cyber. As I said, when you're producing cookies or ice cream, your products don't get cheaper by cybersecurity. They don't get better. You're only more resilient to whatever could go wrong. But this is the wrong business case. The business case is what we call the digital dilemma. And the short version of the digital dilemma is that companies need information to make decisions on products, on product speed, on product reliability, on product quality. Information needs data, and data needs interconnection. From a cyber point of view, you don't want connections. From a cyber point of view, you want data to be localized in order not to be vulnerable to anything. So cyber is there to resolve the digital dilemma. With cyber, you can disclose information in factories in a safe way. With cyber, you can enable companies to deliver this information or data more or less real time. And if you take your competitive advantage being the information, then you need cybersecurity. And it's all about information nowadays. And information demands cybersecurity. Compliancy, like the NIS2 legislation, which is translated in each EU country to a local law. The Cyber Resilience Act, which is, by the way, much harder than NIS2. The Radio Equipment Directive coming up. There is then the tendency to do this as cheap as possible, basically being compliant. And compliancy is not the same as cybersecurity. It must be the other way around. So the real challenge is basically the business case. And in OT, people try to solve everything in one big project, which is more or less impossible cyber-wise. And now, from my experience, I always say, think big and start small. Step one, you need to know from a cyber point of view what's going on in your production automation environment. That's monitoring. Step two, and you can do the steps in parallel. Step two is secure by design, and there you need to think big and act small. Making an overall architecture from a cyber point of view is very well doable. Implementing it, it's very difficult and costly. That takes time, money and energy. So keep your cyber dot on the horizon clear and start building. Everything that you build should be in line with the dot on the horizon. And in the meantime, you have to know what's going on in your network. That's monitoring. And with monitoring, you can drive improvements where the indicates of compromises are. It's very hard to foresee them, but it's very well possible to monitor them. So monitoring drives your improvement, it drives the priorities in the secure by design process, and this will lead you into a cyber secure company. And for many companies, basic measures could be enough. For some others, not. Drink water is a different way of working, a different industry than producing cookies. And there are different priorities in there. Electricity, for example, a problem in the electricity network caused by the process automation is instantly. The effects on electricity is immediately. The effects on drink water take a while. The effects on your cookie factory, if the cookie is not there in the shop, how bad is that? You most likely get irritated, but that's it. But the company itself, it will lose revenue. The other way around is calculate the cost of doing nothing. What damage could be there? Financial, health, safety and environment, or even lose your license to operate. Some companies, if they damage the environment too much, they will lose their license to operate. And this cost of doing nothing is really fairly easy to calculate. And these 3 things, or 4 things basically, they will drive your cyber program. Think big, act small. That's my main advice. Especially in IT, you see that sometimes compliance is way more important than being real cyber secure. In OT environments, with all the legislation coming up, there's a serious risk of being compliant instead of being cyber secure. And in my experience, yes, I've seen this. Air gapping is a fantasy story. Nothing is air gapped nowadays. If you connect safely, interconnections are basically mandatory for driving business. Getting business innovation, knowing everything about the products you make. So air gapping is, in Dutch, a load of nonsense. And air gapping is no protection, by the way. Not at all. The famous example is, of course, Stuxnet, totally air gapped. Still, it got penetrated by some malicious software. Don't even consider to air gap. It's really, I think it's a waste of time. But if you connect safely. And if you connect, you need to know what's going on, monitor. And this monitoring will drive to solve the weak spots, the weakest links. So air gapping, no way, is my view. Zero trust is nothing new. It's a nice word. But we all have the IEC 62443 framework, basically a cybersecurity framework for OT environments. And zero trust is all it has to do with you give rights to someone who needs it, you design as strict as you need it, and if you take the security level targets inside the IEC framework from 0 to 4, then you're basically working to zero trust architecture. And zero trust is about technology. It's about people and about processes. In my experience, zero trust is a nice new word, a nice new wrapping, but in essence it's nothing new. It's like at home. You also think, to whom do you give a key of your home, of the front door? To whom do you give your code of your bank card? That's also a bit of zero trust. So the principles in zero trust are very well defined, and zero trust could well be the dot on the horizon in thinking big. So apply it and do it step by step. Remote access is the major risk in all production facilities. And the problem today with remote access is that there is a whole lot of different remote access things in there. Technically, they all work fine. Cyber-wise, it's a major risk. The most of the OT hacks have gone through some kind of unsecure remote access. If you translate this to the NIS2 legislation, there you as a company are also responsible for your supply chain. So if you want to be responsible for your supply chain, you need to control their access to your equipment. So safe remote access is mandatory. It's not only a need to comply. I think secure remote access is a must-have for every production company, all of them. And why? Production facilities buy equipment like packaging lines, palletizers, from all kinds of parties, and all these parties, they need for maintenance remote access, and they all come up with their own solution. When you buy equipment, you inherit basically a lot of remote access, where in the end you have no idea who has remote access, and you have no idea which of your partners could be compromised. So in my point of view, you as a company producing products are responsible in the NIS2 for the safety of your environment. You as a company in the law are responsible for whatever goes wrong in your supply chain. Remote access is the centralized point for this. If you don't control your remote access, you can never be responsible for your supply chain. So secure remote access is a must, not only from compliancy, but compliancy will demand this, but also from a safe operation. And this is a change in the OT world, where they would normally buy turnkey projects, a pelletizer, a bottling line, a packaging line from a company outside, basically your supply chain, and they all come with their own remote access solution. And this is where problems start. If I were to buy equipment from a large production company, I would define my demands to these companies supplying me packaging line, bottling lines, how to do remote access. And I would want to have remote access under my control. First, start with a risk assessment. How important is this part of your production facility? And again, think big. And the thinking big is replace all remote access by a managed solution that you own yourself and you control yourself. You could easily do the work of this management to an external party, but you as a company, you're responsible anyhow. And now by law also. So think big, go for a remote access solution that's scalable, easily implementable on smaller parts, on bigger parts, and which you can manage centrally as a production company. Start migrating to a centralized remote access solution that you control. Think big, act small. If I were a production company, the non-negotiable thing is that I can stop the remote access at any time I want to. That's the most important thing. So if one of my partners gets compromised, I want to disable him from my network. That's really simple. Where I'm in control and where I can tell my partners, you potentially have a problem, I block your access, your product should work remotely, completely safely, and you go and fix your potential problem. And when you've proven it's okay, I'll reconnect you again. I want to manage it. Ownership is the most important thing in OT security. Each company has a CISO, a Corporate Information Security Officer. I try to tell companies you should have a COSO, a Corporate OT Security Officer. And the ownership is the most difficult thing because production facilities are spread out. Cyber does not make my products cheaper, faster, quicker, better. And implementing new technology in OT environments, and OT stands for old technology, by the way. So you come to environments that are sometimes technically not fit for modern technology like monitoring. So there you need to work carefully. It's very well doable. We have installed many OT monitoring environments. It's doable, but it takes work. Everyone says it's difficult. Yes, it could be difficult. The main thing, it takes time. Changes take time. So start designing it. In the end, it is just as difficult or easy as IT monitoring, but creating value is more important. So the detection use cases that you build, they take more time and they are OT specific. And then remediation. If I compare it to IT, with IT it's very easy to do remote remediation. I could easily disable your laptop from the network. You might get irritated or angry, but really it's not a problem. If I disconnect a production facility or a part of the production facility, you could easily be in a dangerous situation. So remediation from a cyber point of view also always has to go together with the local production experts. They know what they're doing, but in many cases they're not a cyber expert. They don't need to be a cyber expert. So OT monitoring and remediation compared to IT, that's where the big difference is. The monitoring staff needs to speak OT language and the process staff from the factory needs to understand cyber language. So if you want to remove compromised software from a programmable logical controller, for example, you need to know what you're doing. And it's a mistake making OT monitoring staff production experts and the other way around. Where on IT, I could easily reformat your laptop. You might be irritated or whatever, but for the company it's not really a problem. If I do this in OT, things can easily get dangerous. Imagine you have a large conveyor belt of a few hundred meters and I suddenly start manipulating the speed of the thing or switch it on while someone is doing maintenance. You can easily get killed. So that's really the main difference. Building the monitoring takes more time. It needs a more careful design. You need to redo it every now and then in order to have full visibility. It's very well doable, but it takes time. Building detection use case is really different, and the remediation or solving problems, it always has to go together with local production staff. That's the main difference. The next thing that is there basically is Internet of Things or Industrial Internet of Things. This technology will come and it will help you, but Internet of Things or Industrial Internet of Things, I always call it hacker's paradise. The next step is artificial intelligence. Today you can solve everything with AI. It will come and it needs data integration. So basically it will emphasize more on the digital dilemma. So what I would give as an advice, appoint a cyber owner per production facility, take someone who's a production expert and teach him cyber. Let them work together with cyber experts, make them think big and implement small in the production facility where they are. I sometimes joke to CISOs, the OT problem is way more challenging, so the CISO should report to the COSO. Not all CISOs like this. And as a CISO, take ownership. Really, that's the most important thing, and accept that although you want to achieve the same goal, it's done in a different way. Don't try to IT the OT. 10 years ago, CISOs were, I hope I don't insult too many CISOs, more or less denying the problem. The CISO with asset owners in the company, they should drive the cyber program. Should a CISO report to a COSO, I really don't care, as long as there's an owner who owns the whole cyber program, both IT and OT. And in my experience, the OT challenges are so big, you need an owner for that. And who reports to who is irrelevant. And in many companies there's usually a centralized asset owner, not always, but the asset owner or the production owner should be driving the cyber program. And as a company you should create corporate budget for this. If you leave it to the profit and loss of the production facility, there will never be cybersecurity.
Thank you so much. Anything else that you feel like you would like to share?
Don't comply, be cybersecure. Think big, act small. Don't solve everything at the same time. Was my hair okay? Then we have to redo the whole thing again.